All right, in case you couldn't already tell, I am super excited about this course. So, we're going to talk about the importance of clean meats and the skinny on dairy in this course. The problems that exist in the world today cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them. That's from Albert Einstein. I mean, quite frankly, we've created a ton of problems in our own world with the industrialized meat complex and the dairy industry. And we are going to talk about that in this course. We're going to talk about how you can get healthy, how you can make the right decisions when it comes to animal products. So, the course contents, we're going to have our mindset moment like we normally do. Then we're going to have a taking action review. What things should you be doing so far in your 90-day to your optimal life challenge here, and where are you at? We want to do a little review with you, a little mental review. After that, we're going to hopefully get you to understand the marketing terms and the gimmicks out there when it comes to a lot of these terms that are used in the industrial meat market when it comes to things like free range, grass fed, cage free, those sorts of things. We're going to then do a little bit of a comparison on farm raised fish and wild caught. We're going to talk about pasture raised meats and industrialized meats. We're going to give you the skinny on dairy, and then we're going to go into some taking action steps to help you on your journey to a better, healthier you. With that, let's go ahead and jump right into the course. So today's mindset moment: when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is correct, medicine is of no need. Okay, so bottom line is, when your diet is wrong, when you're eating foods that are constantly causing you chronic issues, chronic disease, there is no medicine that you can take that's going to reverse it. All it does is mask your symptoms, okay? When the diet is correct, though, you don't need the medicine. That's what's amazing. And I mean, I am a model for this. I was on a ton of medicine, and I got off of all of it. And I'm very, very proud of that. Very proud that I'm off of all of that medication. It was a major accomplishment for me. It was a big day when I stopped taking the heart medicine. It was a big day for me. And every day after that has been a day of blessing and a day of extra energy. Because even though that medicine was helping me to get to a certain point to keep me alive, it also made me feel like crap. It was a negative effect on my athletic performance. It was a negative effect on my sexual performance because it slowed down your blood flow. So you think about that for a guy, that creates a bit of a problem. So medicine is not a good thing when you're treating chronic disease. It's a great thing when you're treating acute issues. Okay, you get in a car accident, you need an antibiotic because you had to have surgery. Those sorts of things, great, but not for chronic issues. All right, reviewing your current action plan. All right, you should already be doing this stuff. All right, you should be making a bunch of friends and getting involved in meetups and things like that. You should be practicing your traffic light eating. You should have eliminated the toxic foods. Hopefully you're moving. You should be writing your goals every day and morning, reviewing them before bed. We should be measuring our health. You should be keeping health top of mind. Knowledge is power in this one, folks. I want you shopping organic. I want you eating, clean. Hopefully you've gone through and cleaned all those toxic foods out of your pantry. If at this point you have not done that, you really need to do that. Those things are just tempting you if they're still there. Okay? You should have visited a farmer's market and tried to figure that out. And then you should be cooking most of your meals at home at this point. All right. To continue, you should have figured out the major forms of stress in your life, and you should be working to reduce those. I want you to continue practicing your deep breathing. Stop eating the processed foods. Make sure that if there's 5 or more ingredients on the label, or if sugar is added, you just don't eat it. You don't buy it. I mean, ideally, you're not buying stuff in boxes anyway. But I know there's some things that you might want to get, like milks, like maybe coconut milk or something like that, or like a non-dairy cheese, or a you name it, some sort of seasoning or something like that. There are things out there that you're going to want to buy that are semi-processed. not fully processed, but try to stay away from the heavily processed stuff. You should be getting 5 servings of vegetable every day. Eat the rainbow. All right. Eat an anti-inflammatory diet to keep that gut healthy. Eliminate the ingestion of antibiotics to keep your gut healthy and keep your immune system at its peak. Every time you take an antibiotic, you're killing your immune system. All right, stop using those antibacterial soaps and hand sanitizers. Get the non-antibacterial stuff. It's really, by the way, cleaning your hands is more about friction than anything. Okay, so a lot of people just run their hands underwater, right? When they wash their hands and walk away, you didn't do anything. Maybe you rinse some stuff off, but it's about the friction, right? The friction of getting it off. So underwater with friction, I don't usually use soap in public places because I don't know what's in it. I just warm water and friction. Fast for 12 hours a day. That means no food after dinner until breakfast. Give your gut a break. If you want to go longer, that's fine. If you know your gut is in really bad shape, make sure you're seeking out some medical help from a natural medicine doctor. All right, not a regular MD. Make sure you're going to a natural medicine doctor for this stuff. Okay. So industrial farming, folks. Industrial farming. All right, the diversity in our soil is a direct reflection of the diversity in our guts. When we kill the soil with all of these herbicides and antibiotics and things like that, we are killing our guts. We can no longer disconnect the health of the soil to the health of human beings. Our food supply is being controlled by companies that only have lies and poisons to sell us. The mechanics are where the grass and the animals actually meet. The philosophical part is that animals are not designed to be in situations where they are not moving and they're confined. Mother Nature did not design chickens to live in a big coop like this, all jammed together where they can't move around. They're inhaling their own fecal matter on a regular basis. They're sick. They live in miserable conditions. They're highly stressed. And the soil conditions on these farms are destroying the environment by adding to CO2 emissions. There's nothing good about these factory farms. Some people will argue that, we could never feed the entire planet if everyone farmed organically and all these chickens and beef cattle and everything were just free ranging and the way that they were, 150 years ago. Well, I don't believe that's true. I really believe that if we all vote with our wallets, the farms will adjust. Okay, there's plenty of land out there for these guys to go out there and eat what they're supposed to eat and range and really truly be free range and be healthier. And by the way, they'll be making the soil better. All right. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in this course. So when animals eat the food they're designed to eat by nature, their meat is super nutritious and loaded with omega-3 fatty acids. Grass-fed bison is the most nutritionally dense of these. The practices of poor and unnatural living conditions, antibiotics, hormones, and unnatural diet all lead to very toxic and acidic meat and eggs. Industrialized livestock are very high in omega-6s and super low in omega-3s. Now, we're going to talk later on in depth about omega-6s and omega-3s, but what this leads to in industrialized meats, this high level of omega-6s, this out of balance with the omega-6s and the omega-3 fatty acids, is it leads to high cholesterol and heart disease, it leads to cancer, it leads to chronic disease and allergies because it all leads to inflammation. Okay, if you have high levels of omega-6 in your body, you're highly inflamed. What the animals that you eat is what you're eating. Okay, so when cattle, chickens, whatever, when they're fed all of these different things, it makes them more toxic. It makes it takes the omega-3s and just makes them plummet. And then you have this high level of omega-6s, and it makes the meat very acidic. Our bodies are supposed to be alkaline, not acidic. A cow's body, a chicken's body are supposed to be alkaline, not acidic. Okay? Why is the way that our food dies important? So if we think about this now, think about if animals are living in stressful conditions all the time. If they're eating food they're not supposed to be eating, their meat's toxic, right? If they're pumped full of antibiotics and hormones, they're then highly inflamed. Okay? Their meat's highly inflamed. They're loaded with cortisol and adrenaline, all these stress hormones. Their meat's filled with that all the time. Then they get slaughtered in inhumane ways, which spikes that adrenaline and cortisol right before they die. And then we eat the stuff and we wonder why we get so stressed out, right? Why maybe you've had a day where you've been pretty calm and then you sit down and you eat something and you just suddenly feel stressed. Well, it could be in the food you're eating. It could be because you just ate a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol that's now been released into your bloodstream. All right, folks, that's the end of chapter 1. I just wanted to give you a taste of industrialized farming and kind of the negative aspects of it. We're going to jump into more positive stuff and how we can heal the way that food is the way that our food is raised, and how we can do a much better job as people, and how you can vote with your wallet and where you get your food from. All right, chapter 2. Understanding the marketing terms and gimmicks. So we're going to go into all these marketing terms and gimmicks, and hopefully you don't get too upset with how much money you maybe have been wasting on some of these certain gimmicks. But the terms cage-free, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, vegetarian-fed, free-range, and even organic are all marketing gimmicks when it comes to livestock. Oh, wait a minute. But Darel, you told us organic's good. Yeah, when you are buying produce, you want to buy organic. When you're buying livestock, when you're buying meat, now organic is better than not organic, but it's not as good as pasture raised or grass fed. Okay? And we'll get into a little more detail on this. So let's start off with antibiotic and hormone free. If you're spending the extra money for antibiotic and hormone free meats, stop. This is just a marketing play. The truth is that the rules around what the USDA consider antibiotic and hormone-free are so loose that it is just a big fraud. Factory farms can still inject all the hormones and antibiotics they want as long as a veterinarian writes the prescription. And they cannot be given any antibiotics or hormones for 3 days before slaughter. If you really want to make sure you're eating healthy meats, choose a couple local farms that raise pasture-raised animals. Visit them. Learn more about their practices. I'm at the point where if I do not know exactly where my meat comes from, I order a large ocean fish when I'm eating out. So listen, when you think about this just for a second, 3 days before slaughter. So when you go to the store and you look and it says hormone-free, antibiotic-free, okay? All that means that animal could have been given hormones and antibiotics up to 3 days before slaughter for its entire life. And now all of a sudden, it's hormone and antibiotic-free. That's a gimmick, folks. That's pure, it's fraud, really, is what it is. But the food industry is able to get away with it. All right, this happens mostly in cows, chickens, and hogs. Let's talk chicken and eggs. By far the hardest meat to find clean. So free range. Free range means they must have access to the outside, no regulations. There are no actual regulations to actually go outside. So they just have to have access outside. It doesn't mean they actually have to go outside. What the outside conditions need to be or how long they have access to. There are no regulations on this. They could have access to nothing but a concrete pad, which is what most of them do have, by the way. Okay? They could go out to a concrete pad and it's considered free range. Well, that's not what you and I probably think of. When we think of free range, we picture something, right? We picture chickens walking around in, weeds and grass and, eating off the land. We don't picture them in a huge hen house with a door that they can go out. All right, if they want to. Most of them don't. Cage-free. All cage-free means is that while the hens are not squeezed into small wire cages, they never actually go outside. Cage-free hens are typically confined in dark, crowded buildings filled with toxic gases and disease microbes that the same as their battery cage sisters. So no different than the ones in the cages. They're just not in a cage. And like their battery cage sisters, they are painfully debeaked at hatchery. They're debeaked because these chickens are in such pain and such stress, they just peck each other. Okay? Organic and certified humane. All this means is that the hens are fed an organic feed. They can still be jammed into 400-foot long hen houses with 100,000 or more other debeaked hens. Okay, so there's nothing humane about organic or certified humane. Nothing. All right? Vegetarian fed. I'm just going to start right here. Chickens are not vegetarians. Why are we feeding them vegetarians? We go back to the meat problem. We go back to the omega-6, omega-3 problem. If we are feeding chickens a vegetarian diet, if we're feeding them soy and corn and those sorts of feeds, they are not eating what they're supposed to eat. Okay? Chickens are designed to dig in the ground for food with their beaks and claws. When they are deprived of these outlets suited to their energies and interests, they can be driven to peck at each other, having nothing to do with their time once they've laid their egg for the day in a barn building, in a barren building. Chickens love sunlight. They sunbathe daily outdoors, but cage-free hens are denied even this simple pleasure. If you see any of these, they are all bull crap. All right? When you see these, they're just bull crap. It is just a way to get you to pay more or to make you think you're eating something healthy. Don't be fooled, folks. Industrial cattle ranches. All right, so these cattle are fed an unnatural diet. They're mainly fed corn and soy. They're also sometimes fed their own body parts and scraps off of from slaughter of their own kind. So they're kind of forced to be cannibals as well. They're given antibiotics to combat diseases and to create intentionally to create more inflammation in them to make their meat fattier. All right. Remember what we've talked about in the past. What's in fat? Toxins are in fat, right? So if you keep pumping toxins into an animal, it's going to go into fat. They're given growth hormones, and they're constantly breathing their own fecal matter. This is why you have problems like mad cow disease and things like that. So it's just not good. Like these animals are so acidic. Their meat is so acidic. You just shouldn't eat it. You shouldn't even eat it as an exception. All right. Now that brings us to Franken fish. I call them Franken fish. This is farm-raised fish. All right. They are fed diets of corn and soy. Their meat ends up so discolored because they're not eating what they do in their natural habitat. Like a salmon will end up as a white meat, right? So what do? They dye it. They dye it with toxic food chemicals, all right? It's low in healthy omega-3s and high in omega-6s. So you think you're buying this healthy salmon or this healthy fish that's going to give you a lot of omega-3s, and you're wrong. You're getting more acidic components because it's farm-raised. All right, they're void of minerals found in wild fish, so you're not getting all these important minerals. Fish to be aware of are tilapia, salmon, bass, sea bass, Atlantic cod, rainbow trout, Atlantic halibut, and shrimp. All right, these are the most common ones you'll come across that can be farm raised. All right, and there's a 2004 widely cited study that found levels of PCBs and potentially carcinogenic chemicals to be 10 times higher in farm-raised fish than in wild-caught fish. So that's kind of scary, right? I mean, that's cancer-causing stuff, right? It's 10 times higher in farm-raised fish. All right, that brings us to wild-caught fish. Now, this picture you've seen before in one of my previous courses, but, again, farmed salmon, those white lines, those are fat, right? They have a higher fat content. They're higher in toxins. The color, they have to add color to them. And by the way, this dye that they add, they can't even get the color right, for crying out loud. They're adding dye to the fish and they can't even get the color right. They can't get the natural pink, right? It's highly toxic, right? Doctors warn women and children should avoid it because of the toxicity. The chemicals in this dye actually are known to cause children issues. All right. And it's also suspect that these chemicals lead to things like autism, ADHD, and several other mental disorders in children. All right. All right, it's not good for the environment. It's just not good, right? So stay away from it. Don't eat farm-raised fish. Don't eat farm-raised salmon. All right, now, unfortunately, when I first started my health journey, you just couldn't get big fish farm-raised. They just weren't doing it. Like if it was big fish like tuna, mahi, all swordfish, all these other ones, they were never farmed. All right. So finding fish that is never farmed is getting a little harder because as you see right next to tuna, they're starting to be farmed now. All right. So unfortunately, it's getting more and more difficult even to find healthy fish. But just make sure you're asking. Okay. So I wanted to cover too a little bit when we talk about this. So let's talk about sustainable seafood, right? Now, sustainable is something that a lot of food chains will pop in there. I know I personally, Rubio's is one of the places that I go, and I'm very careful about what I eat there because they practice sustainable seafood, which at one point in time I thought, oh yeah, that's cool, sustainable. Like, so we're raising the fish in like its natural environment, but in big pens, and they try to do all this sustainability stuff. But you know what? The problem is a lot of the same problems are created in farm raised fish and sustainable fish as well. So the best thing to do is to eat good old fashioned line caught fish. Okay, wild caught fish from the guys that you see on Discovery Channel going out on the big fish boats and catching your fish for you. That's the best stuff to eat. Let's talk about cholesterol. All right, I told you guys we were going to talk about cholesterol. We're going to talk about cholesterol. So who out there thinks that eating less red meat and more chicken will reduce your cholesterol? Well, I'm going to tell you what if I told you that it's much less about the amount of cholesterol that you're eating and more about the quality of the animal products? So several studies now show that it is not the amount of cholesterol in our food, but the quality of food that determines the scarring of the arteries and the actual blockage. This is partially because chemical treatment with chlorine and bleaching of meat in industrial slaughterhouses. Both of these substances scar your arteries, which cause things to get stuck and blocked. Fluoride and chlorine in your water also help to scar your arteries. The amount of cholesterol in different meat types can vary. Now, before we go into that, the other thing is omega-6 fatty acids help to deposit. That acidic nature helps scar your arteries as well. So when you're eating, grass-fed meats, those sorts of things, you're getting high levels of omega-3s, and you're going to be your arteries are going to be healthier. You're going to have lower levels of cholesterol, and actually your good cholesterol is going to be at a higher level. All right, so here's a chart that I wanted to show you. Now, if you look for the same amount of, this is all based on 100 grams, right? 3.5 ounces of raw meat, and this is based on ground meats. Chicken, the thing that most doctors in the medical establishment tells you that you should eat to reduce your cholesterol, is higher in cholesterol than even 90% lean meat. Now, really, this is how misinformed the medical establishment is on nutrition. They're recommending for you to eat things like turkey and chicken to reduce your cholesterol instead of red meat. Does that make any sense to anyone? All right. And here's another problem. Because there's less fat and less calories in turkey and chicken than red meat, than beef per se, or pork, people tend to eat more of it. So you're even eating more cholesterol. I used to work with a guy that he was an Indian, and his dad died at like 33 years old from heart attack, and it was, his arteries were blocked, and he would only eat chicken because he was told by his doctor that if he ate red meat of any type or pork, that he would probably die just like his dad did from heart disease. So instead, his doctor gave him really bad advice and had him eating even more cholesterol. Okay, my doctor gave me the same bad advice when my cholesterol was high. He gave me a piece of paper that was a diet that I should eat that said to eat more chicken and less red meat. Now, bison, on the other hand, I'm a big fan of bison. I'm a huge fan of grass-fed beef. Huge fan of it. I get it from Primal Pastures in Marietta, California. If you're on the West Coast, most states you can get it. They are amazing. It's always great to know your farmer. They do farm tours and everything else. And I do get my ground beef. I get lamb from them. I also get chicken, and I get my pasture-raised eggs from them. But bison is my favorite meat. Look at the bison, right? Look, it's lower in calories. It's a, now I'm a big fan of fat. I like eating fat because fat keeps you from getting hungry. I'm not that worried about the calories, but I can eat a bigger burger, right? I can have a bigger burger, and I feel more satisfied when I'm eating bison. And the cholesterol is lower than basically all the other meats, and it is super, super high in omega-3s, okay? Even higher than salmon. Hey, that brings us to the end of chapter 2. Hopefully you learned something about cholesterol, as well as about the different types of gimmicks that are out there, and marketing kind of crap that are out there to try to get you to buy inferior products and pay more money. So hopefully that was very helpful. We will go ahead and move on to chapter 3. Understanding clean meats and taking action. If you get perfect eggs, perfect size, too much uniformity, that's a red flag. That's from Farmer Andy at Primal Pastures. What is an omega-3 fatty acid anyway? So before we talk about clean meats, I want you to understand why omega-3s are so critically important, okay? These are polyunsaturated fats. They are so essential to physiological function in our body. If you're having joint pain, things like that, if you have heart conditions, if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, some of it could be because you're too low in omega-3s. So some of you may know from like your fish oil supplements and things about EPA and DHA, maybe even ALA, but EPA and DHA are the most often found in seafood, while ALA is found in vegetable oils, leafy greens, some nuts, and animal fats. It's important to have a variety of these, though, to have all three types, okay? So there's a Harvard Chan School of Public Health study that we will put in the resource section for you to link to that explains the importance of a lot of this, of all of these omega-3s. Now, there's certain benefits that I do want to highlight. So, omega-3s are great for maintaining a strong heart and keeping your hormone levels balanced. They increase fat breakdown inside your body, which means you have omega-3s in your system, you will burn more fat. They also help to keep you beautiful from the inside out. They're critical to healthy looking skin, all right? And omega-3s fats help protect your heart, promote cardiovascular function, maintain cholesterol levels, lower blood pressure, and have anti-inflammatory effects in your body, okay? I personally take a fish oil supplement just to make sure I'm always getting enough, even though I try to eat a diet that is very high in omega-3s. You can get omega-3s through a supplement, like a fish oil supplement. If you're only paying $15 for a bottle, it's probably not quality stuff. Make sure you're getting the wild caught stuff. I use a fairly inexpensive version from Costco that's all wild caught and clean. But research it, find out what you have. Find something that doesn't have fish burps. Sometimes it just depends on when you take it. If you take it with a meal, oftentimes you won't get the burps. A more efficient and delicious way of getting your omega-3s is to eat foods that are rich in omega-3s, like wild-caught fish, seeds, pasture-raised egg yolks, grass-fed bison, grass-fed lamb, grass-fed beef. Why does it matter so much that your meat is grass-fed? We talked a little bit about this in the last chapter, but, in the case of omega-3s, it's super important. You want to have a balance of omega-3s and omega-6s, and believe it or not, it's a 4-to-1. The omega-6s, the omega-3s is what we see in pre-industrialized societies, right, is the balance and to keep like an alkaline level in your body. So you want your what you eat, you want to be at that level too. You want them to be at like a 4-to-1 type thing. The problem is when animals are fed an unnatural diet of like grain and soy and things like that, they end up being super high in omega-6s and having very little omega-3s, and it throws that whole balance way out, and then you end up with very acidic meat. All right. there's that age-old saying that you are what you eat. Well, the same applies to the animals that you eat, okay? Which means what you are what the animals that you eat, okay? The next thing is feedlot animals when they're grass-fed, that imbalance of omega-6s makes them highly inflamed, right? So all of that inflammation you end up eating as well, and you want to make sure you have this balance. So here's a nice picture of a bunch of foods that have healthy omega-3s. You want to get grass-fed butter, obviously, but avocados, cilantro, nuts, olive oil, wild-caught salmon, broccoli. All of these are very good foods to eat with a great amount of omega-3s. There's another huge benefit, though, to eating grass-fed meat, and that's a high level of CLAs. Now, CLAs are essentially they're a substance that helps to increase your metabolic rate, increase muscle mass, decreases abdominal fat, strengthens your immune system, reduces risk of cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and hyperthyroidism, and it also normalizes your thyroid function. Now, there's a lot more of CLAs in grass-fed beef and bison and lamb than there are in grain-fed, right? It goes down greatly. Well, that's not all that's to it, though, right? There's also this concept of cofactors. So when you eat something, like this is why vitamins oftentimes don't work so well. And this is why fish oil doesn't work as well as eating a diet that's just loaded in omega-3s, because when you eat, I'm going to use an apple for an example. If you want like the vitamin A and vitamin C out of an apple, you can extract those and put them in a vitamin. But you're not going to absorb nearly as much in that pill form as you do if you eat the whole apple, because there's all kinds of other nutrients that play together in that natural food to help your body absorb it, okay? And fully assimilate that. Grass-fed meats also provide a wide variety of vitamins and minerals themselves, as well as higher levels of amino acids. Everything's in a proper proportion to each other so that these cofactors all work and they assimilate things together, right? I know my health has improved enormously since I made the switch to eating 100% grass-fed and grass-finished meat. Now, I was, just to give you a little bit of a background on this, so when I went totally vegan, when my cholesterol was high, I did that for 4 years, and my numbers dropped. I was in what was considered a safe range, but my HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol, went high. I was struggling to get that up to the number that the doctor wanted it at. I was really having trouble, and the size of my cholesterol wasn't exactly as big as he wanted it to be. Okay, smaller cholesterol gets stuck easier, and the bigger fluffy stuff doesn't. So is the way that my cardiologist explained it to me. So the thing is that when I switched to incorporating meat back in my diet, wild-caught fish and grass-fed, grass-finished bison and beef, my numbers got better. My bad cholesterol went down a little bit more, and my good cholesterol went up. And the size of my cholesterol is now exactly what it's supposed to be. All right, so it's very interesting, and it was kind of hard for me to digest, having kind of adopted that vegan diet for so long, that this really was the answer, and that I was wrong before. But I was wrong, and I do truly believe for some people, vegan is the way to go for a short period of time to kind of reset your body and almost cleanse your body, but it's not a long-term solution, okay? So Darel's Clean Meats, pasture-raised chicken and eggs. I got to be honest with you, I'm not a huge chicken fan. I don't know if it's because I got chickened out back when I thought it was the healthy thing to eat or what it is, but I do love eggs. I get my chicken and eggs from Primal Pastures. I love pasture-raised bison and beef, as well as lamb, which I don't have on this list. I get the beef and lamb from Primal Pastures as well, and I get my bison from either North Star or Wild Idea. I want you to beware of grass-fed and grain-finished. Okay, so interesting story. I was in Hawaii last summer, and I went to this burger joint which sold grass-fed burgers. I'm like, oh, love it, grass-fed burgers. there we have a place in in Southern California called Burger Lounge. Love to go there. And there, I was explained to me that their grass-fed beef actually was raised locally on the island, fed nothing but a diet of grass and hay and straw its entire life, and then a month before slaughter is shipped to the mainland. So now this cow is now put on a ship, which cannot be great for the cow from a stress standpoint, and then fed a grain diet for a month before it's slaughtered. Now, why do they do that? Well, they do it to make it fatter and more inflammation and more weight, but it's also it's a regulatory thing over there. And it's one of those things that the industrial meat conglomerates over there have forced the regenerative and sustainable farmers and whatnot that are trying to do fully grass-fed. They've been prevented from even doing it. And so if you're in Hawaii, I'm sorry, it's going to be hard for you to get something that's not grain finished, but you want grass-fed and grass-finished. Okay, not just grass-fed. Make sure it's been fed a grass diet its entire life and not fed grain at the very end. All right, you also want wild-caught fish and seafood. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 3. The next thing we're going to talk about in the next chapter is going to be all about the skinny on dairy. So that'll be the final chapter in this course, all about the skinny on dairy. See you in the next section. All right, the skinny on dairy. These are this is some information from one of my favorite documentaries. It's called Got the Facts on Milk. And the dairy industry has lied to us about the benefits of milk for decades. The higher the dairy consumption in a country, the higher the rates of osteoporosis. And there's a Harvard study that tracked 70,000, think about that, 70,000 women for 18 years. Those that consumed the largest amounts of milk had the least protection from hip fractures. Look, the only scientific reports out there that say that milk is good for you are the ones that were paid for by the dairy industry and the USDA. And we're going to talk about that nasty little relationship between the dairy industry and the USDA in this chapter. All the other scientific studies that have been done in history have shown that there is either no or a negative effect to consuming dairy after you're a baby, after you're an infant, and you've weaned from your mother's breast milk. Now, the USDA and the dairy industry, let's talk about that for just a second. Hey, before I get started on this, I just want to let you guys know, I do not consume dairy on a regular basis. Okay, so it is the one thing that I have taken out of my diet because I am lactose intolerant, because I see the negative effects that it has on my body. I don't feel good when I eat it. I don't feel good when I drink it. It gives me acid reflux. It gives me bad skin. It does just a lot of nasty stuff for me. I do on occasion, like once a month, enjoy a little gelato though. Okay, or maybe a little bit of cheese. But when I do, I try to make sure it's raw cheese. And when I have gelato, I try to make sure it's good stuff that's really from Italy, because then it's organic. All right. Now, the USDA has an obligation to promote milk. They're obligated to promote agricultural industries no matter if there's a negative effect on us as humans. Okay? They are obligated. So keep that in mind. They are not here to protect you. The dairy industry spends $175 million a year in advertising alone. Okay, the USDA is here to protect the dairy and meat industries. That is what their charter is. They are here to protect those industries, not us. The U.S. dairy industry is one of the largest conglomerates on the planet. They have an immense amount of power. Lobbyists in Washington, they have control of our government. Okay, just like the biotech companies and the large meat industrial companies, they have a ton of power. All right, dairy consumption is one of the leading causes of inflammation and chronic disease in Western culture, and I'm going to show you a little bit why. There is zero nutritional value in pasteurized milk and dairy. There's some argument for value in raw dairy, but there is none in pasteurized milk and dairy, and I'm going to explain that as well. The largest source of saturated fat in most people's diets is dairy. The largest source of cholesterol in most people's diets is dairy. Okay. The sad thing is if you come out of open heart surgery, you come out of some sort of surgery where they've done something to your heart, like say they put in a stent or something for cholesterol issues or blockage, the dairy industry has so much control. Okay. They control the WIC program. They control, our school food system. That's why there's so much milk in the school food supply. Everything's so highly subsidized because of the tight ties with the government. They control the food in the hospitals. Okay, so you come out of surgery for a blockage, and the first thing they want to do is give you dairy and chicken. That's what they did to my dad. I flipped out. I quite frankly lost my SHIT. All right, I went ballistic on the hospital when my dad came out of his last surgery for a stent. I was like, I did everything but throw the tray across the room, and I went out and I got him a nice, healthy salad with some very clean ingredients and some nuts and things like that. But it was, it's just nuts. But the doctors, quite frankly, agreed with me, and they said they just don't control it. It's not something they have control over. They wish they could change it. So I want to talk to you guys about some false information, and we're going to talk about calcium on this slide, all right? Milk builds strong bones. This is false. When you consume milk proteins, your body becomes acidic, and it pulls calcium from your bones as a buffer to neutralize the acidic blood. Okay, so actually drinking milk is a negative calcium event. Okay, you're taking calcium away. You're not giving yourself calcium. It does not create strong bones. As a matter of fact, it creates osteoporosis. All right, milk helps the brain develop. No, it doesn't. That's false. Drinking milk reduces iron and increases inflammation in the brain and actually makes you dumber. Milk is important to give to children. This, again, is false. After the age of 2, there can only be negative effects of milk consumption. Humans should only consume milk from their mothers. That's it. Okay, now, I know I'm sounding pretty passionate here, and I want to get this across to you. If there's one thing you can take out of your diet, it's dairy that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. All right, unless you don't consume much dairy. But if you consume as much dairy as the average American does, okay, it is the biggest impact that you can have if you're going to change one thing. All right, so I have a quick question about, so why are we so obsessed with the idea of milk and calcium? The reason why is because we have been brought up in a society where we're just told it over and over again on TV. These crazy commercials with the old man with his arms falling off and the little boy like just pounding his milk then as a result. I pounded milk as a child. It didn't make me stronger. It made me fat. It made me sick. It made me inflamed. All right, 1 cup of milk has about 270 milligrams of calcium. And I know we went over this chart from, if you guys remember from the vegetables course. I wanted to get the calcium point across in that course. We have the same chart. If you look at this chart, you can see that not only do a lot of other, vegetables, nuts, fish, things like that have calcium in them, but some of them have even more. And here's the really amazing thing to think about. It's not so much about how much calcium is in something we consume as how much can our body absorb. Now, our body only absorbs about 30% of the calcium in milk, but we suck more of it than what we absorb out because of the acidic nature, right? So if we only have 30% available and absorbed, what's that mean? I mean, when we look at that 270 milligrams, that's not so great. Okay, so some of these vegetables that we eat, they can be anywhere from 40% to 50 to 60% absorption rate. All right, so if I have something like, say, bok choy, which has 158 milligrams, okay, of calcium, but it absorbs at like a 50% rate, and I'm only absorbing 30% of the 276, I'm actually getting more calcium to my body by eating the vegetables. Another reason why you need to eat your leafy greens. Tons and tons of calcium. Kale, collard greens, all these things have a lot of calcium. Lactose. Let's talk about lactose. Lactose is milk sugar. Whoa, light bulbs should be going off, right? Milk sugar. Haven't we talked about how bad sugar is for us and eating too much sugar? It basically turns to glucose. It causes insulin spikes. When you are a baby, you have the enzyme to digest milk, to digest lactose specifically. You have an enzyme that will break down lactose. At the age of 2, humans lose this enzyme. That's why we become lactose intolerant. Now, after the last few generations, because milk has been so widely consumed in Western culture, believe it or not, 85% of the Caucasian population has developed the ability to continue producing this enzyme in adulthood. I'm not one of them. Don't know why. Caucasian don't have that enzyme. I do not. My youngest son does not. My oldest son seems to be okay, but he does have some asthma issues, and when he has milk, it flares up his asthma. So we are a dairy-free household. My wife has been dairy-free for years, even before I met her. We only have very limited amounts of dairy, and it's never in the form of just milk. 75% of the world is lactose intolerant, folks. All right, 75% of the world. Now, if you have lactose intolerance, here's what some of your symptoms might be. You might have shortness of breath, nausea or vomiting, flatulation. If you are gassy all the time, try cutting out dairy. You might have allergic reactions, things like skin rashes, eczema. All right, eczema is the first thing, if you have eczema, that I try cutting out is dairy. All right, you could have abdominal cramps, abdominal cramps and diarrhea. There I was. I'm going from abdominal cramps to diarrhea, and I say craps. But I think you're getting the idea. Now, what you should do about it: avoid dairy. Just cut it out for a while. See what happens. All right, stop having dairy for a couple weeks and see how you feel. If you feel better, then I want you to reintroduce it. Have a little bit. All right, see what happens. All right. If you are going to have dairy, please have organic. Even better yet, have raw organic dairy. Okay. You can take an enzyme supplement to help break down lactose. That's what a lot of people do. Like, hey, I don't have the lactose. I don't have the enzyme anymore. So let's take this. No, you're normal. You are normal. So why would you take an enzyme? You're normal if you can't break down lactose. All right. You can consume more probiotics. I actually recommend maybe talking to a natural medicine doctor, looking at some probiotics if you've had consumed a lot of dairy in your life, to kind of try to just get things back in balance. Inflammation. Milk is the biggest cause of inflammation in the Western diet. I'm going to repeat that again because we've talked a lot about inflammation in my courses. Milk is the biggest cause of inflammation in the Western diet. All right. It leads to allergies and skin conditions. It can make asthma much, much worse. IBS, osteoporosis. It does not prevent osteoporosis. As a matter of fact, it is a big cause of osteoporosis. So please, let's get that false myth that we've been lied to over and over again. Let's get that out of our system. All right, environmental toxins. This one, you might think, wow, Darel, you're going out there now. This is a bit of a far-fetched, but think about this. All right, the consumption of animal products has doubled per person in the last 50 years. So per person in Western culture, we've doubled our consumption of animal products. And this goes back to what I was talking about on the previous lessons in this course, right? We are eating too much meat. So if you want to balance out the price to your wallet of what the extra cost, because I'm not going to lie to you. I know we went through the budgeting course and how we can buy organic food cheaper. Meat is one of those things where it is going to cost you more to buy grass-fed and to buy pasture-raised wild fish. It's going to cost you more. There's no way around it. Okay, but if you're only eating half as much per serving, per meal, it's not costing you as much anymore. It's equaling out. If anything, you might even be saving some money. All right. Now, because of this doubling, all right, dairy cows happen to be the largest producers of methane gas on the planet. According to the UN, it is a bigger source than all cars, trucks, trains in use today in increasing greenhouse gases. Wow. So if we all stopped consuming dairy in the amounts that we do, we wouldn't have these huge dairy farms with all this methane gas causing to more and more greenhouse emissions. That's pretty impressive. And think about it. Those environmental toxins are things that we're breathing. They're issues that we're having. They're more exposure to some of the cancer-causing rays of the sun, those sorts of things. All right. They also have been all around the planet cutting down forests, not just for wood, but for large dairy farms, which even makes the greenhouse problem even more because we have less vegetation to deal with the CO2 levels, right? Cancer. This is a big one. This was probably the biggest reason why I decided to cut dairy in the first place was when I read the book, The China Study. So the China Study experiment, which is the largest experiment that has taken place on the planet, period, when it comes to human beings. They tested all of China, literally, to find out why certain affluent parts of China were getting Western disease type things like cancer. They proved they could turn cancer on and off by introducing the milk protein casein. They could turn it on or off in rats. Simple. 100% of the rats that they fed casein got cancer. None of them that they didn't. They were able to give these rats cancer just by introducing a milk protein. The top 20 countries with cancer are also the top 20 milk consumers. All right, these correlations, all right, they're not just coincidences, folks. All right, hormones and antibiotics. We talked about this in one of the lessons on earlier in this course, but I want to specifically talk about it when it comes to dairy because this stuff is nasty. All right, BST, bovine cow. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that word. Also known as RBGH, right? So basically, it's the bovine growth hormone. That's what we're going to refer it to. All right, so I don't look stupid. It's injected to increase milk production. All right, listen, this is what it does though. It makes the cows sicker. Then the cows get treated with antibiotics. Now, antibiotics don't get killed out and they make it through the pasteurization process. All right, it makes humans sicker. It's been banned by Europe and Canada, but not in the U.S. Cows treated with RBGH have high levels of IGF-1, which is a cancer-causing carcinogen, right? It has been linked to human cancer development. The FDA banned the labeling of RBGH free, right? So there was a push to get RBGH free so that farmers could actually say, look, I'm not putting the bovine growth hormone in my milk. Like organic farmers and whatnot were pushing to get this put on their labels. And it was denied. They weren't trying to make people put it on if they were putting it in. They wanted to put it on their own labels. And it was banned by the FDA. Now, why the heck would that happen? I'll tell you why that happens. Because there's so much money tied in this industry. And it's tied to your congressmen, it's tied to your senators, and that's why it gets denied. Okay? That's why these things happen. That's why these things that make no sense, like GMO labeling, that's why these things don't make it through. Okay? It's because there's so much money in these industries. So pasteurization and raw milk. So I want to talk about pasteurization. There's a little chart here that Kate walks you through the pasteurization process if you're not familiar with it. I'm not going to walk you through this. Basically, pasteurization is heating up. You're boiling some sort of liquid. It could be milk. It could be juice, whatever. You're heating it up so you kill all the bacteria and the enzymes in that milk. The problem is you're killing the enzymes and the bacteria. Okay? So it's necessary to do to milk today because it's so freaking toxic, guys. Stuff is nasty. It's just pussy, fatty, it's nasty. All right, so they have to clean it up. This also kills any beneficial properties that are in the milk. Raw dairy might actually have some benefits in the form of probiotics, but it's very hard to get. It's very hard to find raw dairy. I can find it at some of the health food stores I go to, and I do buy it on occasion. At Thanksgiving, I make some garlic mashed potatoes. I make them one time a year, and I use real raw butter in it. You know what? They're delicious, and it works very, very well. But we do it once a year. Beware of dairy alternatives. So there are a ton of dairy alternatives out there. I want you to understand that just because you're not eating dairy anymore doesn't mean you should switch to all of these dairy alternatives. Just try to go without dairy is the better way to go. The problem with a lot of these is they contain a lot of canola oil, quite a bit of them, especially the cheeses, right? They contain a ton of canola oil, which is highly inflammatory for your body. If you can find ones that contain things like olive oil, coconut oil, and they don't contain some of these bad ingredients, then those are fine. And there are a few that I do use. I use a nut-based cheese, for example. It's fairly new, and it's still not 100% the best thing to have, and it's really super expensive. I mean, really expensive. So we just don't use it a lot. We use it a little bit here and there. Even the organic ones can be worse than just consuming milk because of all these toxins. So you got to be careful. You don't want to replace your milk and your dairy with something that's worse. All right. If they contain carrageenan, stay away from them. It's cancer causing. You don't want it. There's been a lot of activism around carrageenan in alternative milk products, though. So it's been taken out of most of them. So it's highly unlikely you're going to see it in many things today, but it can still be out there in some products, especially the non-organic ones. Most of the organic ones have removed it, though. Watch your soy consumption. All right. Soy can lead to weight gain and hormone imbalance and things like that. It's okay to eat soy if you're eating the whole soybeans. Okay. Try to stay away from alternatives that just extract part of the soy. There are a lot of alternative additives in nut milk. So watch the additives in the nut milks. Best thing to do would be to make your own homemade nut milk. It's pretty easy to do, but it can be time consuming. I don't do it. I have a coconut milk I get at Costco. It's pretty darn clean. There's an almond milk I get that isn't as clean as I would like it to be, but you know what? It's pretty good. So, you have to make compromises here and there sometimes. I would honestly go with nothing but the coconut milk, but my boys don't like the coconut milk. The girls like it. I like it. So it's like 3 out of 5 people in the house do the coconut milk, and the other 2 knuckleheads do the almond milk. So nut-based cheeses I mentioned, those are good. So these are alternatives you can get. And then nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast, I use that as a Parmesan cheese alternative. It's really good sprinkled over your pasta and stuff. I also use it in my world famous vegan pesto, by the way. So if you're ever in San Diego, if you're ever in Southern California and you want to look me up, I'm glad. I'd be happy to talk to clients. We can talk about that pesto. All right. So with that, here's a little chart on the left, shows you some of the other cow's milk alternatives. There's a lot of stuff out there these days. There's a lot of people that have gone vegan. So this has been a big industry as of late. So taking action. We're almost to the end of the course, folks. Research the source of your meat. Understand where it is coming from. All right. Find a local farmer that practices restorative farming. Visit them. See how they raise their livestock. Practice asking questions when you're eating out. Pick the best option for clean meat. In most cases, this will be a wild caught fish, but you never know. You might get lucky. I was in Florida and Orlando 6 months ago, and I went to this restaurant. They had an amazing assortment of grass-fed bison. I was in heaven. I love bison. I know you guys have probably heard me talk about it. If you guys have not tried bison meat, you have to cook it properly. I'm telling you, it's absolutely delicious. I've sent bison as Christmas presents to some people, and they're blown away. People that were super skeptical about it before, they're blown away. Dairy. Here's the thing, guys. This is the biggest taking action step for this week, and it's going to be not the biggest one so much, but the hardest one maybe for you to do. I want you to stop consuming dairy for the next 2 weeks. Okay? This is a test. I'm not saying that you have to never consume dairy. All right. I do not prescribe to not ever eating anything, right? You can have some dairy here and there. Like I said, I eat it a little bit here and there. It bothers me if I eat it in a lot of quantity. If I have a little tiny, and when I say I go have gelato, I get the little one, okay? If I have a bigger one, then I have problems. But if the little one, I'm okay. All right? So stop consuming it for 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, of course, in a couple weeks, I want you to introduce some dairy back in. Because you might not notice the difference taking it away. A lot of times that's what happens to us. We don't notice the difference taking something away, but then we start to feel better and we notice when we put it back. Okay? All right, so eat clean meats and greatly reduce your dairy consumption. Eating only one serving of dirty meat or dairy can disrupt your entire microbiome. So think about it. Smart eating, traffic light eating. Remember, if it's an industrialized meat or non-organic dairy, it is a red light food. Dairy is always a red light food, by the way. But if it is a industrialized meat, it's red light. If it is a wild caught fish, pasture raised, grass fed, meeting all those requirements that I gave you, then it's a yellow light food. So you just watch how much you eat. Okay, everyone, have a great one, and we'll see you in the next course.